Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this week's edition of BookBytes on this chilly evening. What better way to celebrate our local literary scene when we have another celebrated award-winning artist and writer and poet and community activist, none other than Khadija Heeger. She's a published poet, an actress, a facilitator, cultural activist who hails from the Cape Flats. Her poetic work has been characterized as stark and unapologetic, and I know I'm looking forward to a very engaging and fun interview today. Her debut collection, Beyond the Delivery Room, was published by Mujaji Books in 2013, and today we'll be talking about her latest collection by the same publisher called Thicker Than Sorrow. It's much anticipated, her second collection, and we look forward to delving into the crux of the themes that Khadija Heeger has presented through this very powerful and beautiful poetry. She's also, needs little introduction, is one of South Africa's award-winning actresses. She featured in Arends Vlei, Alles Milan, Afgrond, Sewendelaan, Recipes for Love and Murder, Christmas van Map Jacobs, Down So Long, a movie shot in 2019 in Hout Bay, in which Khadija is the lead actress opposite Shomana Sevi. It was part of Silver Scarum 2022, and she was nominated for Best Actress Award. Avocado, a film detailing the lives of the wealthy Willemse family, has recently been screened on Flicknet, and Khadija plays the matriarch Sylvia Willemse. So her international work includes Recipes for Love and Murder, Lowrider, and Locked Up Abroad. She still maintains a close eye on the heritage sector as it pertains to identity, which features prominently in both her performance poetry and in her latest collection of poetry, Thicker Than Sorrow. Assalamu alaikum, Khadija, and welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have this opportunity to chat to you about your incredible work, your incredible body of work, I should say.
Walaikum salam. Just a correction. I have not won any awards yet.
Okay,
I'm
so
still
what did
waiting for those.
Okay, so the one for the film, Down So Long. Okay, a nomination for Best
It's a
Actress Award.
nomination,
So,
yes.
so I hope the Angels made Amin on that because
Yes.
it's so fantastic to have someone of your caliber. You've such a hard-working creative, and to have this opportunity to pick your brain about your work. Speak to us about your inspiration. What brought you to this point of so many forms of expression? And we talk of the body as an instrument in this theater of life, and both
Mm.
as an actress, as a poet, as a performance artist. Speak to us about your motivations.
Um, oh, that's very interesting. I'm a bit of a voyeur. I think most people who perform are voyeurs. And my motivation, I think, um, comes very strongly out of the community that I grew up in, a community that has been stereotyped into this idea that we don't have an identity, or we don't really have a culture, we don't really know who we are. And I think those kinds of um, ideas and things that keep being repeated over and over from various corners. I think a lot of that stuff drove me to towards a place where I had to examine all of the stuff and ask myself, so what is identity then? And what is this weird notion that we have about only being one particular identity and only having one blood river flowing through us? Um, it makes no sense to me,
Right.
frankly. It's quite a Nazi idea, the idea of one blood river flowing through somebody, this pure, this understanding of purity. And I think in the mouths of certain people on different continents, they think that when they speak this stuff, that it's actually got nothing to do with that. But actually, that was the thinking around
Right.
Nazism, you
Yeah.
know? So we are all actually very mixed as human beings. It's impossible. So those are the kinds of things I think that in the past, and still does, it still drives me. But other things have started to creep in. And I think it's as a result of me getting older and not needing, feeling like I need to explain myself and who I am anymore, and stamp my foot and put my stamp down. Then I feel I can enter space differently. But of course, I will still speak with great passion and fervor about identity stuff and identity politics and understanding and driving home the point that we have to understand that we are all mixed. It's the only real identity is to be mixed.
And maybe that's precisely what brings us home to ourselves, because you speak about giving voice to many of maybe the questions you've had through your growth phases, through all of our growth phases. We start to question the world we inhabit and how we've seen that need for validation, perhaps, or also just to be seen. Every human being needs to be seen. I don't know whether they want to be seen, but we do need to be seen. And to discard this notion of racial purity and understand uniqueness, but also humanness. I
In
see all
humanness.
those
Yeah.
themes, I see all these themes coming through in your poetry. But I love how you said, as we get older, there's this idea of just being, of inhabiting the space that is ours, of making the space ours, but then continuing to extend voice and expression and all of those things. So,
Mm-hmm.
so absolutely, I take a huge value in what you've been saying. And at the same time, we still, in some quarters, have this kind of fanaticism about race and where we fit in, and this kind of so-called status quo, this invisible banner or banners of where we belong. And
Mm.
like I remember when you're playing on the play field in this kind of this pick me, you want to be in the sort of so-called the team. You want to make the team, but it's not about that until we realize that, you know. Um,
Mm.
so yes, so speak to us about thicker than sorrow, because it's not, you're not just describing grief. There's so much that happens in a
No.
relatively
Yeah.
not so heavy book.
The look, I mean, I've got a lot of poetry that still has to be published. And Thicker Than Sorrow, I mean, a lot of the work in Thicker Than Sorrow was actually written a few years ago. That's the same thing that happened with the first book. Actually, I perform my stuff, and personally for me, I find it's better to perform it. But Thicker Than Sorrow, the title itself is actually taken out of a poem in the book, and my publisher, because I couldn't find a title for this book, said, "What about Thicker Than Sorrow?" And I was not completely sold in it. The line in the poem goes, "My blood is thicker than my sorrow. My blood is thicker than the ink in those history books that would deck the tables of my children with lies about themselves." Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing because this is not a poem I know out of my head. So that's where Thicker Than Sorrow comes from. And that poem is specifically written because when the world talks about Africa and Africans, it talks about us in a very particular way. We are spoken about as victims. Africa, downtrodden Africa, poor Africa, the war-torn Africa. We always need to be uplifted. Uh, um, Africans, we depicted in a very particular way on this continent. We are not the only continent by far that's depicted in that way. But when people make a reference to us, people from around the world, news-wise, the reference points for Africa is poverty, war-torn. Basically, we can't handle our stuff. Um, I think they need to be reminded that Africa itself is extremely rich. They've appropriated pretty much everything. And one of the reasons we have wars is because they deliberately destabilize us so they can continue to steal and hold us hostage in a very particular way. I mean, just one name comes to mind, De Beers. Um, so Thicker Than Sorrow it was very specific. Once I realized that my publisher was actually right, it's a very good title. Is to say we are not just war torn. We are not just poor. Yes, there are poor. We have poverty here. But there is so much more to Africa and Africans than what you see on your television screen and on a podcast and on some kind of news bulletin. So that's where the title comes from. That's where the feeling comes from with regards Thicker Than Sorrow.
It's a very memorable title, even if it just sort of takes you, kind of a shadow from the idea of something being thick, blood being thicker than water. But I think, like I said, when I first read the title, I expected a treatise on grief, perhaps, not to make it lesser. But I understood it now. I understand it now to be the personal is made political in so many ways, and the political is brought, to a very personal perspective when we really encounter our world. And I find that as a poet, you really inhabit and encounter your space, and whether it's through a physical being or your observations and your activism. And so I commend you on how you've been able to quantify that in the form of this poetry.
Thank you.
When we talk about identity, like one big question that now comes to mind is, this concept of nationalism, and we think, well, this is what it is to be South African, but is there a this? Is there really a this? A single this? A singular this?
I don't think so.
To be South African?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't. It's such a difficult thing for me that, I mean, I am South African and I'm very happy to say that I am. And I'm very happy to call myself African. I love the way so many people go, the Africans in this country. And I just want to go, oh, where are you from?
Yeah.
But I'm very proud to be there. But I don't think it's one thing. I mean, if anything, it's that we are from this place. That's the one thing. Okay, to be South African. I must tell you that that's a very difficult question for me to answer. I haven't really given that a lot of thought, but I think we are many things. Of course, there are things that only exist here, that I know that when I'm away and when I've been away and I haven't been away from South Africa that many times, but every time I've been away, there is a musicality that I miss about language and the way people speak here. In particular in Cape Town, I miss it. And in particular Afrikaans. And I refuse to say Afrikaans on principle, because actually it is Afrikaans. I think that distinction is an unnecessary distinction. And what it does is it takes what we speak on the Cape Flats and says it's not actually Afrikaans, but it actually is Afrikaans. That musicality I really miss. So in that way, there is that kind of thing that is very, very, very much ours, just like with any other country. I'm sure somebody who lives in Naples, when they're away, there's something that's very particular, not just to Naples or Italy, but I'm speaking specifically about Naples because of the ghettos there. That there's something very specific about where they come from, the community that they come out of, their space, the musicality of the language, the body language, because it's very different from any other place. So I think, yeah, I think in that way we have particular types of South Africanness in different places. Joburg's got a different energy. In parts of Joburg, it will be different from central Joburg. But there is something that will always be within that, very definitely of our soil. This is all very airy flary. As you can hear, I'm struggling to sort of um, solidify the notion. But I'm sure that whoever's listening understands what I'm getting at. Yeah. So
I
in
have
that
to
way,
agree.
there are many ways of being South African, you know.
Well, thank you so much for humoring that question. I didn't really see it as a struggle. What it is sometimes when you throw out a question, you get the most authentic reflection straight off the cuff. And that's what I was hoping for. And that's exactly what you gave me. Thank you so much. Because what I feel is I'm glad you use the word community, because as much as we think geographical boundaries in terms of a nation state, there are these pockets and sense of community that really are our survival thread. And whether it is that you grew up in the Cape Flats or somebody who grew up in Durban or in
Mhm.
Fortsburg or anywhere else in the country, we have the sense of community, of a sense of belonging, a warmth, and we wear that through our culture, through our language, the
Mm.
words that we use. And if you pick up that language or that sense of language any other place in the world, if you're walking through a marketplace or anywhere
Yep.
else on a beach, you immediately have that connection
Mhm.
with home, and home is really the sense of community. So my next
Mhm.
question to you would be, how do these themes, sense of community, identity, and representing our various colors and threads of identity, how does it translate now from the page onto the stage?
Mm. Okay, give me a little bit more. How does it
You
translate
can
from the page onto the stage?
interpret it entirely as you wish. I mean, now when you're acting out a script, um,
Okay,
you really
got
have to
you.
be, you have to sort of, yes, extend yourself. How much of you is in it, but how much of the observed women that you've seen around you
Mm.
fall into these characters that you play on television, on the screen, and on the stage?
A lot of what I've played is definitely. I mean, I've only really ever played people from my community, um, and that in itself makes it fairly easy to do. Um, what what does become a little bit difficult, or a little bit of a challenge, but that's part of what acting is. You have to embody something. You have to have a character enter you. And I'm very happy to say that because I live in my communities and I've had to portray so many different characters within my communities, I've had a lot of books to page through, human books,
Right.
all around me. And that's made it very, very easy because you can go, oh, I know somebody like this, or more or less like this. Yes, she would say that like that because there is an auntie that I know that speaks like that. So the research is all around you, and it's quite a beautiful thing. I think in future, what I would like at some point is to play somebody completely divorced from my environment. I think that will really be a challenge. But so far, I'm very grateful to my community. They have unwittingly assisted me in portraying these amazing characters that I'm very grateful to. I mean, I know it's a strange thing to say, but the fact that I've been able to take them off the page and walk with them and become them is something that I'm extremely grateful for. Miss September Charlene September in Recipes for Love and Murder. What an interesting woman. And that's also partly a lot of that was about stuff I've experienced, but also women around me. We know so many of them, tough as nails, but also extremely vulnerable. There's a lot of nuance um, in the environments that we live in that people on the outside don't see. And this the stereotyping kind of erases the nuance, you know. So people become bullet points. It's like they like this, and then that's what they do. That's how they speak. And you don't. It doesn't really reflect the nuance. But there's so much around us. I mean, it's multi-layered. Um, I was thinking today about a very simple thing about how the weather influences the disposition of a people. I mean, it's a simple thing and it's not a new thought, and how this Mediterranean climate, being so close to the sea, being who we are here in Cape Town, how it affects our rhythms, you know. I was in Joburg recently, and then Joburg, and where Joburg is situated and how high Joburg is, and its weather affects people who live there differently. Durban affects the weather there affects, and so we have all of this. I have all of this stuff to draw from. I can literally take a character apart and go, okay, so where does she live? Oh, they say she lives here. Okay, is she living in the ghetto? Not quite. She's living kind of on the edge. And you know how we have areas like Hanover Park and Newfields, Menenberg and Sherwood Park, Fairways and Parkwood. So we have these areas. So you place the character. And then some characters are not quite so cut and dry. They actually live with their feet in both, you know. We have an incredibly interesting tapestry in this world that we live in this country. Uh, and I suppose in some ways the stereotypes have forced us also to to kind of expand ourselves. Certainly it has me, because I'm going, no, 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 no. You know, stereotypes are often there to protect us, but they also often stifle us. So for me, they've certainly made me want to expand beyond those kinds of things. I don't know if that answers that question.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does. Also, while you were talking, I mean, you have such immense empathy in the way that you speak about, especially women that you represent in your work. And, oftentimes, if I speak as a writer, you're a poet, you're a writer as well. When you're creating characters just on the page, that in itself allows you to step into the shoes of someone, to try to think in that person's mind. And so I envy the opportunity that you have, to actually enact those characters. Absolutely beautiful to just conceive of an idea like that, of being able to give voice and shape to characters that you're observing. It's almost like you're walking through a garden and you're picking all the blossoms that you want to put into this bouquet that you're creating. So I was seeing
Absolutely.
these visuals. Yes, I was seeing these visions of bouquets while you were talking.
Mm.
So it's a wonderful opportunity, a beautiful one at that. The South African acting space. What can you tell us
Yeah.
about that as an insider? What are the pitfalls? What are is it an engaging space? Is it an easy space to maneuver?
The South
Not
African
to put you on
acting
the spot or
space,
anything. Yes.
the South African
Not,
acting space for actors, there are many different aspects to it. For actors and performers, from uh, from a workspace point of view, I mean, and just in terms of us being working actors, there are lot of things that would need they need to change. Uh, um, yes, certainly rates need to be fixed. Hours need to be fixed. All kinds of things that happen when people are unionized, and when a government has looked properly at policies and understands the life of an artist. Um, uh, recently many of my peers have been speaking about this. So I'm going to start with this aspect. We people think that when you are on television and when you are in movies, you must be earning a lot of money, and certainly we earn money. But what they don't realize is that we get taxed a lot of money. We get taxed 25% by SARS. Then we get taxed. We pay commission to our agents. So for most of us, that's almost half of our income. So it's lovely, I'm sure, from the outside, and we love what we do. Understand that. We love what we do. But that is the reality of our lives. We get taxed an enormous amount of money. Also, it isn't glamorous. A lot of what we do is actually work. You know, it's not pitching up and just being glamorous. You sometimes you work long hours. Sometimes you have to repeat the same things over and over. And I think a lot of extras, when they come on set for the first time, they are rudely awoken by this.
Right.
They sit there and they go, "This is not what I expected." And you can see them literally wilting as the day passes, because that is what it's like, you know. And you will have recently had the privilege of shooting a very big scene, very big scenes, and big scenes are particularly long to shoot. And there are many angles and many camera angles, so you end up repeating many parts several times, and you have to remember what you did. Um, and it, when I leave a set like that, I'm very elated, even though I'm tired. And I only know that I'm really tired once I sit in the van and I'm driving home. And then all of a sudden I go, "Phew,"
So you're really
you
running on
know,
adrenaline until then.
yeah, you run on adrenaline, and it's fab. It really is a beautiful thing. I really enjoy what I do. I really do love it. But we do have issues in this country, and there are things that we need to sort out with regards uh, uh, issues around employment and protection for actors and artists in this country. For instance, we have a lot of people coming to shoot here, and that is fantastic because it's work for our actors and it's also good money. But in countries like uh, Britain, for instance, there's an allotted amount of time, there's a allotted number of hours that you can make an actor work, and then you have to end. Here, of course, it could probably go on until 9 o'clock at night, depending on what you're shooting. And, you know, it's kind of like a little bit like the wild, wild west. We do it because we love it, but we do need a little bit more protection. And
Right.
we need the policies to change around that. Um, yeah.
Khadija, thank you so much for your insights, for your sharing with us the insider details, but also some significant comment on, how sort of the environment can be improved to enhance and to ensure that our arts are properly sort of engaged and the best potential brought out from
Yeah.
artists from our art sector. I think there's just so much of talent and possibility in this country.
So
We wish you
much.
everything of the best with the new book, and we look forward to more from your pen. Thicker Than Sorrow is a very memorable title, as I said, and I hope that lovers of poetry will be picking up copies of your book, and we pray that uh, um, you get the award for Best Actress, and yes, definitely, and obviously continued success in your line of work as well.
Thank you, Shafinaaz.
It was
It's good
wonderful
to be.
chatting.
It's good to be here.
Thanks for your time. And with that, that's it from this weekend's edition of Book Bites. We look forward to more upcoming in the next week or so. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.